Hi everyone, and welcome to today's Expert Chat, Minecraft and More, games for kids with learning and attention issues. My name's Andrew Lee, and I'm with the Understood team. We're really happy to have with us here today, Jamie Martin. He's an assistive technology consultant and expert. Hi Jamie, how are you?
Hi Andrew, how's it going?
Great, really happy to have you here today. Could you tell our audience a little bit about yourself and your background?
Yes, I can. So Andrew, you remember this is the third time I've done a chat with you. So the first time I imagined what my son would say, introducing me, and he went through all that as me. And the second time I had my wife introduce me as me again. Well, there's not any other people in our house, so there's only actually one other living being in the house, and that's our cat. So today, my cat is going to introduce me. Meow. My name is Jaeger, but the boy in the house sometimes calls me Chuck. This is the guy known as Jamie, who gets annoyed every time I politely ask for food. He's usually on his computer all day. I don't know what he does, but he certainly throws a fit if I try to rub my face on the screen. I can also tell you that he's not spending his time on Amazon ordering more catnip. I can tell that he's getting ready to talk to someone on the computer because the baby gates are out, and you know what that means. Jaeger gets banished to the family room so that he won't interrupt. Oh well, it's just as well. I need a nap anyway.
Your cat gives better speeches, better introductions than most people I know, I think.
Yeah, we don't get along very well, the cat and I, so this was fun anyway.
Awesome.
I interviewed him before this.
Awesome. So today we're talking about Minecraft and more. Just to start off, maybe we can talk about the attention that games are getting. Why do you think games are getting so much attention, and why have you seen games that can be good for kids with learning and attention issues?
Yeah, absolutely, Andrew. I mean, I think video games certainly at points get a bad rap, but that's mostly because of the ultra-violent games. And people's concern that kids are spending too much time in front of screens. But video games are certainly not new. You might have too, Andrew. I had the original Atari 2600 back in the day, and I remember that was when the first kind of home consoles were out, for kids to use. And I remember spending hours on that thing, and I'm sure my mom was concerned. About the amount of time we were sitting in front of these games. But, over time, I think a lot of game developers have really started putting more thought into them and, putting more educational aspects, into some of these games. Especially, for the touchscreen devices these days. Kids are the skills that they're learning in school are certainly supported by some of these games. Particularly the math ones and the ones that support phonics skills. Games can also improve problem-solving skills. There's actually a really cool one. Are you familiar, Andrew, with the game Lumino City?
I have heard of the name and I watched the trailer, but I do not know the game.
It's a really awesome game. It actually combines like paper art with the video game. So these guys basically found a warehouse, and they built this city out of paper and cardboard, and then kind of animated this whole little game where it's like an adventure game. You walk through as this little girl called Lumo, and you have to solve these puzzles as you go through the game, trying to find, the girl's granddad who got lost at the beginning of the game. So that kind of thing, I don't mind. A matter of balancing, that screen time with, the non-screen time. Just so you make sure that, the kids aren't, being glued to a screen all day.
Yeah, that's great to know. There seems to be a difference between screen time that's perhaps good or, stimulating and maybe screen time that's not so good. And while we're talking about that, I think a lot of parents have heard of the game Minecraft, and that's the title of this chat. Could you tell us a little bit more about Minecraft in particular? What is it? Why does it have so much buzz? And what are your thoughts about it?
Yeah, so I have to admit that maybe a year and a half ago, I was like a lot of other parents who might be watching today, where I had no idea what the appeal was to kids. I just knew that I was watching my son kind of get sucked in there, and spend hours on the game until we peeled him away from it. But eventually, I kind of you know acquiesced to his begging. He wanted me to play with him, so I said, "All right, fine. Let's show me how to play." And it's a really, really amazing game now that I'm actually playing it. It's hard to describe unless you have actually played it. But I think, at its most basic level, you can call it a game where, you create your own world and then you figure out how to survive in that world. So, it sounds kind of cheesy, but it's a game about life, really. There are two modes you can play in. There's the creative mode, which a lot of people liken to Lego, building with Legos. So you have a bunch of these blocks, like this is like a little dirt block with some grass on it, and everything is square, everything's in blocks. And in the creative mode, you have an unlimited amount of building supplies, like dirt, you have wood, you have cement, and you're a character basically. So this is Steve right here. So you go into this virtual world as Steve, or your own Minecraft character if you want to build your own, and you create things. You can create a house, you can create buildings, you can create railroads. They call them mine carts, but there's certainly transportation there. And in that creative mode, you're free to build whatever you want, and you don't have to worry about surviving in your world. But in the survival mode, basically you're dropped into this virtual world, with nothing, with no supplies. And you have to figure out how to survive. So the first thing you need to do is build a shelter, because if it gets to be nighttime in survival mode, the monsters like the Enderman, which is this guy hiding back here, they will come out and, battle you. So unless you have a shelter where you can go in when it gets dark, you have to battle them and try to win the battle. Eventually, you have to, forage for food so that you can survive. That either involves hunting animals, like pigs right here, or cows or chickens, and also planting gardens. So you can plant things like carrots in order to eat. You also have to go forage for all of your building supplies. So in order to get wood to build a house, you have to go out into the forest and find appropriate trees that you can cut down and turn into wood planks so you can build your house. Then you plant new forests so that the trees come back. So there's kind of like an environmental thing in there too, an environmental message. It's just that you can do it. It's kind of open-ended, really, Andrew. And it's just a matter of deciding what you want to do in your virtual world. Go ahead.
So it sounds like it's almost like a virtual Lego box. Is that would you say that's kind of accurate?
Yes, that's very true. And I think but I think the difference there is what's so appealing to kids is that you're there in that virtual world with the building blocks. So, you're looking around in like 3 dimensions and you're building houses and buildings around you. So it's not so much like Legos where you're kind of looking down on top of the world. You're actually in the world yourself.
Awesome. Sounds really interesting. We actually had a couple of questions come in. They're not specifically about Minecraft, but because I want to get these questions answered, we'll go right to them. We have a question from Arbasal, not about Minecraft, but he or she is asking if you can suggest some games that are good for phonics for a child with dyslexia or math. We'll come back to Minecraft later, but I just want to make sure she gets her question answered. A game for phonics that you really like.
Okay, sure. Yeah, there's several for phonics. Was there any indication how old her child was, Andrew?
There wasn't. I would imagine elementary school, but Arbasol, if you're watching, you can always type in and let us know what age your child is, and we can Jamie can adjust the answer.
Okay, so there's a collection of apps that I really like for kind of phonemic awareness and beginning to learn, the letters of the alphabet and their sounds. They're made by a company called Originator, and they're available for both Apple devices and Android devices. And they are all the apps that begin with endless. So there's an endless alphabet, there's an endless reader, there's an endless wordplay, and there's recently they've released an app called Endless Learning Academy, which actually combines a lot of the activities from the other apps into one. And basically, they walk you through, different, kind of sound symbol relationships between letters of the alphabet. They're animated. There's a collection of cute little monsters in there. It's very multi-sensory. You're dragging and dropping letters around the screen while hearing, the letters sound at the same time. So if your child is used to, doing some kind of multi-sensory learning, like Orton Gillingham or something like that, I think this is going to really appeal to them because it does kind of bring in that multi-sensory learning. So that's the Endless collection: Endless Alphabet, Endless Reader, Endless Wordplay, and Endless Learning Academy. There's also a really good one called Alphabetics, which is a little more systemic. Is that right? It follows a system. It goes through the alphabet in order, and there's a series of again, multi-sensory activities for each letter sound. And that actually includes recording the child's voice saying the sound of each letter and then being able to play it back and hear themselves saying each letter. So, all of those are really good for those younger kids first learning those phonic sounds and, it's that phonemic awareness kind of thing.
She, Arbisov, piped back in and said that her child is 10 years old, or his or her child is 10 years old. Does it change as they get older? Are there some good sort of phonics-based games that are really fun and cool and hip for kids in that 10-year range?
Sure, yeah. I actually just came across a great one called Mystery Word Town. And Mystery Word Town puts you in kind of like this Wild West, setting. And the object of the game is to collect all of the missing gold that's spread around the town and to kind of capture all the outlaws. And in order to get to, each outlaw, in order to capture them and put them in the jail, you have to go through a series of phonics and word-based activities. And there's several lists of words you can work on at a time. I think what's really great about that app is you can also create custom word lists that then get inserted into the game. So I think it would be really good for teachers to use in the classroom or even at home where you could sit down with your child and figure out words that he's having difficulty spelling, create this customized word list, which can then be inserted into the game. And it's more of a fun way for him to study and learn those words rather than sit there with a deck of flashcards or something like that.
Awesome. So Mystery Word Town. If you had asked that question, hopefully that helps. Let's turn back to Minecraft because we've had a couple of questions here about the age appropriateness of the game. One person, ED2510, that's their username, asked what age is it appropriate for, and then another anonymous user asked, is there sort of a difference between the survival and the creative mode in terms of the ages? What are your thoughts about that, Jamie?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I think there is a difference. I hesitate to actually put an age level on what's appropriate. I think that's for parents to decide. But just know that the creative mode does not involve, the monsters who are trying to come and get you, like this guy. And he could be kind of scary for, 4 or 5-year-olds. So I think if my son was playing it and he was only 4 or 5, I would not let him play the survival mode. I would just have him play the creative mode because that's, he could be working on his, his visual spatial skills that way because he's building in 3 dimensions. And there's no need to, be freaking out over these scary guys coming after him. On the other hand, the survival mode, I think, can help develop a whole nother set of skills for older children, like around 8, 9, 10 years old. My son is almost 10, and he has ADHD, pretty profound ADHD, and executive functions for him are just really, really difficult. So, he has difficulty getting started on his homework in the morning. He has difficulty putting his books away on his bookshelf when he's finished. He just has a whole bunch of issues with executive functioning. However, when I'm playing Minecraft with him, which in that survival mode also involves a lot of executive functioning skills, for some reason he has no problem with it at all, in the game. I think a big thing that kids have difficulty with in terms of executive functions is planning and prioritizing. What activities should come first. So I kind of mentioned this earlier. In the survival mode in Minecraft, the first thing you need to do in a new world is build a shelter so that you have a safe place to go. So you have to plan that and prioritize that as the first thing that you're going to do. You can't be tempted to go off into the forest, looking for wood, or exploring the river, down the hill. You have to prioritize and get that shelter built. And my son taught me that, that you have to do that. Organization is another executive function that kids have a lot of difficulty with. So when you're collecting all of your building materials in Minecraft, you have to keep them organized. You only have a limited space in your inventory to keep building materials. If you have more materials than that space allows, you have to organize them into chests, and remember what materials you put into different chests. And Duncan is just, my son Duncan is fabulous at that. He can say, oh, you need, 2 doors for that house. We have to go over to this other chest on the other side of the field. So he knows where all of his materials are. So, I would hesitate to say that, Minecraft could help teach executive functioning skills, but it certainly gives you the context to discuss them, with your kids, and maybe kind of, carry that over into real life situations.
That's really interesting. Now, help our audience understand that a little bit more, that you are actually in the game with your son. So both of you are in the game at the same time, sort of playing playing the game with each other and seeing what each other do. Is that accurate? And maybe you can explain to our audience like how you set that up so that's possible.
Sure. Yeah, that's actually another good question. So you can play by yourself in Minecraft, but I think it's a lot more engaging for kids if they are playing with someone else. So if you have 2 players, one of you creates the world and you have it either on your device, on your iPad, or whatever your mobile device is, or on your computer, and another person who's on the same Wi-Fi network can log into your world. So that's how you get 2 players into one world. But I think that kind of play works really well when the 2 of you are sitting next to each other, because it does take a lot of communication and kind of planning and teamwork and figuring out what each player is going to do in order to get a task accomplished. So if you're building a house together, one of you is probably going to be chopping down trees and making wood boards and planks, and the other one of you is building the walls up and laying out the floor plan of the house. If you're working together, that process is gets done a lot more efficiently. So I think that kind of, so you're kind of almost you're working together in person. So in that sense, I could see my son, he's not so much getting totally absorbed in the game like he does when he's by himself. When I'm playing with him, we were communicating with each other. So there's still that kind of human interaction going on. So I think that is another thing that sets Minecraft apart from other video games, is that when you're playing with more than one player, you do have that personal connection and that human interaction going, which I think is important to maintain.
We have a question that's somewhat related to that from an anonymous user. They're talking about servers and which kids are playing Minecraft together. And I don't know if you have any thoughts about that, about kids playing on servers sort of apart from parents, or if they're playing remotely. I'm not as familiar with that, but maybe if you can explain kind of the concept of a server, the concept of how kids might be playing with people outside of your house on Minecraft, and how to sort of think about that situation.
Yeah, so I mean that kind of thing concerns me a lot. When I'm sure it's concerning a lot of parents who are watching too. A server is just it's out there. It's not in your house, and anybody who can access that server can join. So you don't necessarily know. It could be a friend at another house that you know, but anybody else who can access that server can join. So even when we go away, in a to a hotel, if we're away on a trip and we both have our iPads and we're unwinding from the day and playing Minecraft, generally we don't play at the hotel because other people can access our world because they're on the same Wi-Fi network. If we do, we keep a really close eye, and if we see somebody else join, we immediately get off. Because you don't know. You don't know who's out there, trying to get in on your game and communicate with you. So I think, in general, at least for me, this is my rule of thumb. We play together, over a Wi-Fi network when we're in our house, or when we're at Grandma and Grandpa's house, when nobody else can get on that, onto our game, and we can kind of keep it private. You just like anything else on the internet. Once you get out in kind of the bigger world, you just don't know. So I like to stay away from it, but I'll let parents decide that on their own for their own families.
Okay, that's a great point. I think that for the parents that asked, just important. I think what Jamie's saying is it's important to know who your children are playing games with, but obviously seems like there's ways to ensure that it's a parent or someone you know. I wonder for parents that are out there now, Jamie, they've heard some stuff. You talk about Minecraft. What's the easiest way for them to sort of test drive it, see what it's all about for themselves? Maybe they have a mobile device, maybe they have a PC, maybe they have a Mac. What would you suggest on some of those platforms about ways that they can try it?
The PC version is actually much more difficult than what's called the Pocket Edition, which is for your mobile device. There's the touchscreen interface for a mobile device is a lot easier to navigate than using a mouse or a trackpad on the PC version. There are also a lot more features on the PC version that can kind of get you bogged down. So if you want to try out Minecraft, just to get in there and see what it's all about, so you can talk to your kids about it, I would recommend the Pocket Edition for your mobile device first. But you know what? I would say don't even try to play it by yourself the first time. Get into a world that your child has created themselves, and let them take you on a tour around their world and show you, how to move around, show you how to build new things. That's how I learned. I didn't learn on my own. If I had tried to learn on my own, I wouldn't know what to do, because you get into the game and there's no directions. You have to figure it out on your own. Plus, if you're letting your child do that with you, that's kind of like a bonding thing. For my son and me, that's a huge bonding thing. He knows more about the game than I do, so it's a good ego booster for him too. A good self-esteem builder, where that he knows more about it and he can teach me, because I teach him about so many other things. This is one area that he can teach me about. And for kids with learning and attention issues, I think that's a huge thing for them to be able to do that. So yeah, definitely the Pocket Edition. And if you have the time, sit down with your child and let them teach you how to use it.
Great. So Minecraft Pocket Edition, if people want to try it, an easy way to try it.
If at all possible, play those games with your child, because then you still have that human interaction going on. I would also say before the game playing time starts, decide together with your child on a time limit. All right, we have an hour before dinner time. You can have a half an hour on this game, and then you need to do a different activity. And then set a timer that will go off when that half an hour is over. It can be the egg timer in the kitchen, or it could be something a little more advanced, like there are plenty of timer apps that they can start up once they start playing the game. And then an alarm will go off so they know that that time is up for that. If your child has an iOS device, an Apple device, you can also use an accessibility feature called guided access. I did a webinar over the summer on built-in accessibility features for Understood. So you can go into the archive and look that up to see how to use guided access. But basically what that will allow you to do is set a timer for that game that your child is playing. And when the time is up, it will block access to that game. So you can ensure that they won't keep playing after that time is over. But then my last point is actually, I think, directed more toward kids with learning and attention issues, especially kids with ADHD who might have a lot of difficulty with transitions in between activities. My son has a huge problem with transitions, going from one activity to the next, especially when he is completely absorbed in a video game. So what we do in our house, which I would suggest you do, is plan out what that next activity is going to be after the video game time is over, so that they know what to expect once their game time is finished. And they're not just walking around looking for something else to do. So plan out another activity before they start playing the video game. I think that makes that transition a little bit easier.
Those are great suggestions, Jamie. Thank you so much. And I do want to mention that on Understood, we do have an infographic about screen time for kids with ADHD that has some of those suggestions. So if you're watching and that's something you're thinking about, on our site we have an infographic that's pretty helpful. That looks like all the time we have for questions today, Jamie. Thanks so much for being with us. This has been really helpful and really interesting too.
Yes, thank you. It was fun.
And actually, we had one last question that came in. If you want to answer this, I'm sorry, I know I just said we ran out, but I want to make sure we get this one. Can you say the name of that timer app again? I think someone just asked about that.
Oh, I don't think I mentioned the name of a timer app. Well, actually, what I talked about was guided access, which is an accessibility feature. But there's also just a very basic, plain old timer it should be in the clock app, either on your iOS device or your Android device.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jamie, and always good to have you.
All right, thank you.
And thanks to everybody who's watching. You can see all of our events on u.org/calendar. Have a great day.